Okay, greetings, brothers and sisters. I've had kind of a lot of intense, weird days and stuff going on. And yesterday we got high speed internet for the first time. We've had so many different internet issues over the years here. Um, the internet that we had for years, it was like a satellite type thing. Our neighbor has a tower and whatever. The neighbor let us use their tower to run some that the company was like a local company could run the tower off, uh, and then it just stopped working for like a week. At the same time, Verizon had some internet that came out that we tried, and that sucked. Like it was good at times, but and I had so many problems with Verizon, the people lying to me about it. And finally, someone says, "Well, the signal's really weak where you are," and I'm like, "Well, that would have been good to know in the beginning." So we went back to the other internet, and they're losing. Like they're going out of business now because like internet is coming to this area, real rural, not really rural, but we're close to a city, but we're kind of rural. And there was like a couple of weeks ago or something, someone must have put like something on our doorknob, and they were put out these internet hubs along the road, and we were like, oh wow, we're finally going to get high speed internet out here. And I had my son call. And he was dealing with it. They were going to install it. They were like, weren't sure like whether we could get it or not. And that went on for a couple months. And then I found this like little, one of those things they put on your doorknob saying that high speed internet was available in our area. So it was like, must have been sitting there, was dirty. Like, it was like, we have like an outdoor table and it was sitting there, like someone must have taken it off and put it down. And maybe it was me, I don't know. And not read it. Like, that sounds like something I might do. And I gave it to my son, and he called, and he had a friend from the internet, and the guy gave him some great deal. Like we got like cheap rate on installation, and I think it's the cheapest internet that we're ever going to have compared to the other two companies that we were using. And then 2 days ago, a guy came out and was going to run cable, like, and we have we're off the road a little bit, and so I had to get the bush hog out, and I bush hogged like a path through the pasture, and he said, well, he wanted to run it down the driveway, and I bush hogged along the driveway. I threw a bunch of wildflower seeds out by our driveway, and I wanted them to all go to seed before I bush hogged it. But like I had to do it anyway, and then yesterday a guy showed up. He was like an island guy, like one of those guys from like Samoa. Or I didn't ask him where he's from, but like real happy guy. Like he wanted to pet our dogs and stuff. He's kind of like chubby and whatever. And he like hooked up the internet, and my son said you gotta check out the speeds, and we're getting like 600 MBSs for upload and download. Now usually I would get 10 MBSs for download. Like that would be good. Like usually it was around 5 under 10, and now I'm getting 600. So I made a video yesterday. It was 3 hours long, and it took like 20 minutes to upload, and it was quite extraordinary. But it just happened like we've had internet issues forever. Like it's just we've had spotty internet. It's just been a thing we've lived with. Everybody around us has high speed internet, and now I have to go back to that company because it was like 2 months ago I went back to the satellite company because Verizon was just tired of Verizon's BS, and the guys gave us a great deal, and now I got to say, hey, we've got this is like it's gonna suck because they put extensive work, and I think they're down people. Like it's one of those things where they're just a dying business because the all the people who need it, like they were the best game in town for lots of people. Like they were the only way you could get any sort of internet. But now like internet's coming out to all these rural areas, and the reason we had lost internet in the first place was like something blew in the satellite, some receiver or something. It took them like 2 weeks to fix the thing, and then so they're gonna lose like money on doing all that, which kind of I feel a little bit bad about. But it's just that like they're gonna go out of business anyway. Like they can't survive because like there's now there's Verizon internet, which is 5G from a tower, and now there's actually high-speed internet through cable, which is like the best for a variety of reasons. But anyways, so that happened, and like it's just amazing now for me to be able to upload a video that quickly. I can't tell you, how long it takes sometimes. Like maybe it takes like a whole day, depending on what's happening. And the other thing is that the internet was constantly going out, and it didn't do that before. And I think it's because of I'm not psyched. We all know, everyone has now Verizon 5G internet beaming through their house, right? Because it's just in the atmosphere. It's everywhere. And I think it's disrupting things. I think it disrupts my microphone and whatever, and that's still going to happen. But like now with this high-speed internet, there just hopefully won't be any like all of a sudden the internet cuts out for like a minute, and that sucked. Anyways, so that's that. There's a bunch of other things that are going on, and we've had I guess it's like a Mercury's in retrograde. To have something like that is kind of wonderful. To have that resolved. And so I was thinking about this yesterday, and when you turn on a TV show or a movie, 99% of what you're watching is going to end in some sort of happy ending, right? It's going to end in some, happily ever after type of situation. And you know that going into the movie. And if they don't do that, it feels completely dissatisfying. Like if they go against that trend or against that paradigm that everything's going to work out at the end, you're like feel robbed or cheated because that's what the movies you've been trained to experience, right? And so you're watching something and they can make it so against insurmountable odds. Like you kind of know consciously that everything's gonna work out, right? Because it just always does. That's how our movies and TV shows train us to think about reality. That everything's gonna work out, right? That everything's gonna come together, and it's gonna, everything. The hero's gonna, and against insurmountable odds, like the hero's getting his ass kicked, and there seems like no chance that the couple's gonna get together. Everything that's happening in the in the drama and in the conflict and in the obstacles and challenges that the protagonist faces. There's just no way. You're like, there's no way this can work out, but like, it's gotta because somebody's writing it, right? And when you do any kind of creative work, I've written some books, and what I do here, is creative in some way or another. You know how things are going to end, right? Like the ending is already there. Like you don't know the way it's going to end, but it's how it's going to end, right? In terms of, with a story, I mean, you have a kind of a framework of, whatever is going on. There's the conflict, the climax of the story, the movie, or whatever it is, and then there's the resolution at the end of the thing, and you know what it's going to be. Like where it's going, and maybe some ideas come because it's a free flow of information, right? In terms of like when you're writing something creatively, the story just flows through you, and the things are just you have ideas, and all of a sudden there's a chapter that you didn't you'd expect, and there's some hidden turns and whatever. Somebody who writes something like an epic like The Lord of the Rings or something like J.R. Tolkien or somebody writes one of those kind of big adventure novels, there's like a channeled aspect to all of this work. But at the end of the thing, you know how it's going to go, and you can make it go any possible way, right? Like in some cases, a story has its own life, but it's the ending is within your, you can create any kind of an ending, and it's almost always going to be happily ever after, like I said. That's what people expect, and they don't fund movies that don't have that in it, right? And so you're watching something, and you're in this. Your mind goes from your active beta state to passive alpha state, and you experience the stresses and all of it, and you get sucked into this reality, this illusion that's being perpetrated, created in front of you. And, you're like, oh my God, I don't know how this is going to all work out. But then if you step back and you go, like, you hit pause and you go to the bathroom and you check your phone, or like you go eat something or whatever it is. Then you come back or you get some food and you're like, oh yeah, and you're just, you get, you're out of the illusion for a little bit. You go like, yeah, it's, well, just like you're trying to figure out how they're going to get there. And when you see enough shit, like over the years, you see enough stuff, you end up, like I say, this is going to happen here, or this is, I'll say this to my wife. Yeah, this is, you can see where things are going, right? There'll be like there'll be something that's introduced that it's going to come back later because it has to, right? Like I was watching really kind of a stupid movie. People were trapped on an island. It's kind of funny. There's some funny parts to it. And there was a character, the hero, had been a Boy Scout, and he says talking about how he had a merit badge for hang gliding. And I'm like, well, he'll be hang gliding. It feels he built his own like wings and like whatever. At the end of the movie, like they'll introduce something, you're like, well, there's a reason we're hearing about this because it's going to come back around, right? Because it's and they use the same patterns and templates, and they, when the big event happened in 2001, my first thought, because I was I wasn't like I am now in terms of my understanding of things. I said, I bet Al Qaeda did it because I've been trained about Al Qaeda, right? Like you've been introduced things in this, the theater, this, theater of, the show, what I call the show. You've been introduced by things, and they'll tell you that, this is going to happen, right? Like, remember Joe Biden said in Afghanistan, like he was getting hammered by how bad the withdrawal was going in Afghanistan. And that part wasn't his fault. Like, someone was screwed over. Nobody wanted, like, Trump didn't want to bring the troops home because he knew it would go disastrously. And they were going to leave $80 billion of equipment there, right? Like, someone was fucked, right? Someone, like, was going to just, whoever had to bring the troops home, they were just screwed over. And, Joe Biden had made decisions as a congressman and vice president. He was a part of the problem. But now he had to bring the troops home, and, like, it wasn't going to go well. And he was, taking it, like, over and over again by the press and everybody. So he came out with this thing called ISIS-K, right? And, it was stupid and silly. But, the media who has been covering for the senile MNFer anyway bought into it. And then, of course, like, all of a sudden ISIS-K started to attack for no reason, right? The Americans are leaving. Why are you going to attack? Why are you going to risk your life to attack the Americans who are doing what you want and leaving, right? ISIS-K was a subset of ISIS, which is, of course, we know is the Iraqi, not Revolutionary Guard, what was it called? Whatever it was. Saddam Hussein had these elite soldiers who folded into the population and later became ISIS when they became an American asset. And they were doing these false flag type things, whatever. And so I already knew this was a controlled type, because I had understood the patterns and seen I understand the script, right? Because I've seen enough of this stuff. And so ISIS-K was just some sort of asset. And so, Biden made it about, oh, we're being attacked and, we're being heroic, and they changed the narrative away from his disastrous withdrawal. Unfortunately, he said we're going to, we're not retreating, we're not giving up, we're just going to fight a drone war. We don't need troops here anymore. We'll just bring drones in. Of course, they're not going to do that because those drones are expensive and and you need people on the ground. You can't just do drones, right? And so they started droning people, claiming they were ISIS-K, and then he killed 8 kids. And the media, he killed 8 children, like with this bullshit, kind of narrative, right? But, it's just something that they say to, like, to distract. Like, these are the things that they do in terms of these other scripts, right? But going back to the movies and TV shows, it's going to end up happily ever after. And, people say all the time, you can do whatever you want. You can be whatever you want. You can, you can become anything in this world. And that's not true. Because there's actually a divine script that you have no control over. And the problem with our movies and TV shows is that you you are led to believe that happily ever after is a thing, and it isn't, because you're happy for a period of time, and then shit happens, like more stuff happens, right? All the way until the time you die. So, if they could really control things, the people I call the controllers, and this is a problem with the truth community, you give too much power to these people would never die, right? The people who control the system would never die. So they have things, they have, we all have the ultimate ending. Like the ending is you die, right? Like that happens for every single person. That's your ending. Like there's no happily ever after. The real conclusion to your life is you end, right? You die, and whatever you've accomplished and whatever you've done, whatever you have, whatever great moments of pleasure you've had, whatever conquests you've had, whatever you have in your life in terms of like I said, accomplishments and things like this. Those are not the end of your life, right? Those are the maybe the pinnacle of the good part of your life. Whatever troubles you have, whatever difficulties you have, whatever failures you have, whatever all of these things. None of those things are the end, right? The end is when you die. Like the end is your death, and you can't stop that. Like there's, I mean, people are oblivious to this because right now we're all marching to that inevitability, and whatever way you die and whatever way you lived is what's important. Like you're building to having a good death, right? Like you've accomplished what your soul wants you to accomplish. You've moved closer to God, and very few people do that. Even religious people, because they're especially this is bullshit heaven thing they've told you, right? And that the way that you get to heaven, it's just a lie. Like there's no heaven in the way that they've constructed it. There's no you accept Jesus and you're going to heaven. That doesn't exist. And so if you believe that and you're doing what they told you to do, and you're kind of deluding yourself that that's where you're going, you're just going to come back here, and probably not in the best situation because you've lived this illusion, right? I mean, probably you're a little bit better off than somebody who's an atheist and is just having a hedonistic life and is just indulging because they don't think there's anything else, right? And so but all these things, anything that's not the truth is going to lead to a bad death, right? You're leading to a bad death. You're not connecting to the soul part of your existence and dying in some way where you've had a life that you've gone in the positive direction. And most people are going in a negative direction. They're accumulating more grossness and more entanglements and more whatever it is that they have to resolve in a future life where there's more problems, because the script that you're going to get from a soul's perspective is to deal with all the mistakes that you've made, like all the mess that you're making right now that you're going to have to clean up in a future existence. I've always talked about when I realized that Tuesday Paul was screwing over Thursday Paul, like the things that I was doing that were going to make it harder for me in the future. Like when you're making bad decisions or you're just being lazy or you're doing something, and those things, your thoughts that you have and the energy you have and your intentions and your emotions and your anything that's negative and taking you away from where you're supposed to be going is going to make it harder for you in some future existence, right? A future version of yourself, whether it's a future life or just this life later on when you're older. I recently had this I was watching this and the other thing was happened yesterday was I accidentally turned I actually published the Journey series for the public. I didn't mean to do that, like the latest edition, 155. And it's just for members. I've been doing it because of I've explained it a little bit before, but just I'm making so much content for one, and there's things I just didn't want to make public in the Journey series at the particular time I made it. And then I just have been making so much content, it hasn't been, there hasn't been a slot for me to publish the Journey series, the back episodes. But I turned off the ads, which I do when I make it for the members. And then I accidentally hit public because once in a while I just do shit like that, right? I forget, I just do what I do normally, which is make my videos public, right? And I saw it, and I said, so I made it unlisted, and I'll now put it up for just members because I was, going to drop this other video that was kind of an epic video about Kamala Harris's first interview, and I didn't want to sabotage that video with a long Journey series video. But there's over almost 1,000 views in the Journey series and almost 4,000 views with the Kamala video. And in this Journey series video, which I've included this, I put together a series of these, part of the end of the Journey series, like four of the audios. Um, I I put them up on my backup channel, the Gratefullness meditation channel, and then my backup channel, in a video called Epiphanies. And I was watching an old video of the Saj Marg, gathering with Master Charji back in 1996. And I had been practicing Saj Marg for 3 years, and I just came back from India. And it was Charji's first visit back to America. And somebody had, captured some video on their phone. And I was in the video. And I looked at myself for a little bit. And I'm like, I recognize that person. And I realized it was me. I've had a beard now for like 15 years. So it's me clean shaven. And I looked at it and I was like, who is that person? And I had this kind of weird, almost like dysphoric reaction. And I saw it was me, but it wasn't me. Like it wasn't me now. It was me then, right? And it was a different version of myself. You ever see that movie Looper, where Bruce Willis goes back and goes back in time and he sees because Gordon Joseph Levitt, who just I covered in my last video, he was making a video how Trump is trying to give him 75 grand in tax breaks. But anyways, it's a really good movie. It was one of just really good movie. There's a scene where Bruce Willis says um, his older version of this guy is chastising what a dumb piece of shit he is when he was young. Like he's like, you're like so fucking stupid. He's like, you don't know what you're doing, and and the younger version is supposed to kill the older version, right? That's part of the thing. It's like this loop. But I had this kind of weird experience of seeing myself. It's kind of changed, what I thought about, because I was like, I was more spiritual then than I would give myself credit for. Just these, I had this kind of reaction over a series of days and the way that everything has played out with the whole heartfulness becoming this cult or whatever, right? So, getting back to this thing, this idea of like, this happily ever after thing, and the people controlling the system, if they could, they wouldn't die. If they could really write the script, they couldn't die, right? And so you've been trained to experience that it's all going to work out for you, right? And so how that relates right now to the world the way it's going and these two candidates, there's people who have bought into the illusion of Kamala Harris just because they hate Trump and they believe the Democrats are good. And they, they just see it as like she's the only one who can save America. But why hasn't she and Joe Biden done that the past 4 years? And then you have the Trumpers who believe that Trump is the only one who can save America, right? And he's their protagonist, the people who, all of a sudden love Kamala Harris out of nowhere, right? They've been presented this illusion by the Democrats. And then the Trump illusion, where you have Trumpers who, there's all these QBs that had to like eat shit when Trump, that was one of the best things when Trump lost. Because the QBs were so obnoxious at that time. And they were just, all the things that they thought were going to happen because of this script they'd been handed by they've been handed these little Q drops and they let their imaginations run freaking wild. And they, developed this reality that was completely like goofy and bullshit, right? And they were so culty. I used to, really slam the QBs a lot. And one of my viewers, because they screwed all of us, like in their stupidity. Like the doing truther videos and being a truther is way worse now because of the QBs. Because it's the government came in, one of those agencies, probably the CIA or whatever, and they created this Q thing. Maybe they took it over. It started out organic or whatever. But the person who was making these Q drops at the beginning wasn't the same person. The government started to do it, right? It could be multiple people because it's anonymous, right? It's somebody with a Q clearance, supposedly, who's anonymous, and they're dropping these hints because they need you to have your little, junior detective like spyglass and get it out of the cereal box and go out there and solve crimes, right? And be a part of it. You're be a part of it. We need you. We need you to be part of it. We can't do it on our own, right? And then Trump was a part of it, and they were just living large, and everything was going the way it was supposed to go. And then Trump lost, and they were all like, "Oh my God," right? But one of my viewers sent me a video, and it was a young Q guy who looked like maybe he was a Christian, and he realized that Q was bullshit. Like he just saw it, and was a part of a whole little subcult where he and two other guys would have podcasts, and the QBs just ate it up. So he said to the other guys, "Look, there's just so much evidence now that this is BS. They keep on moving the goalposts, and Q keeps on being wrong, and we keep on absorbing it, and Trump isn't who we thought he was, right?" And they turned on the guy. And other two guys went on and said he's a shill, and he's been playing us the whole time, and they knew each other they were like childhood friends, and like they knew each other for years, and they're like, what do you think? The guy's been a shill since he was like, in his, whatever, when you first met him, before even Q existed. He was a plant, right? Like, just the kid was like he was dumbfounded at the way that they turned on him, so cult like, right? And so the whole thing, it was great when Trump crapped out and the QBs had to stick their tails between their legs, and they had to hide and pretend that they were, and all the damage they'd done and how obnoxious they were, and how we were all like, "Oh my God," it was great to see them, get this, this beat down, right? But they've come back now because Trump and they're writing they're writing the whole fight Trump thing and his fake ketchup gate, all of it. But you have two groups of people who their protagonists, are only one of them can win the election, right? But the sad thing is, whoever wins that election is completely screwed. I mean, it's not sad for me, but sad for them, right? And so they're under the illusion there's no happily ever after here, because they can't script that shit, because they have to take your lifestyle. There's too much debt. The system's imploding. People suck. We've become completely weak and entitled, and each generation is like a worse piece of shit than the previous one. And so, like, they can't make a happy ending either way. Like, there's going to be a victory celebration for one of these two candidates. There'll be someone's going to win the election, and all the people who, there's this combating narrative of who gets the happily ever after. You have your Democratic relatives who are like, "Oh my God, Kamala's going to win, and you guys are going to be so sad," and and who's the real hero, who's the protagonist? Because that's how you've been trained to think everything's going to end in happily ever after, and it's really abusive because, like I said, it doesn't exist. Happily ever after doesn't exist, right? Happiness is predicated on the opposite, right? Like, if you're happy all the time, then that becomes normal, and it ceases to be happy, right? Like, happiness is something that has to be in contrast to something else. Like, everything comes in binaries, happiness and sadness and, whatever it is, right? Happiness and miseries, like, these things. Blessings and miseries, whatever you want to call it. Like, everything comes in a binary. And to have one, you have to have the other. Like, if you want wealth, you have to experience poverty, right? Like, so, if you want to have, moments of abundance, you have to experience deprivation, right? Like, everything is better when you've had the opposite. Like, if you're going to have a meal when you're really hungry, if you've been hungry, and, you appreciate things when you don't have them, right? And so when you're lonely, then you find that you have company, it feels better. Like, if you have periods of the opposite condition, then when it changes, it feels so good because you've had the opposite, right? And so if you have happily ever after, it ceases to be happiness because it's just normal. There's no contrast to it. And so it doesn't exist in any framework, right? Like the happily ever after is, the movies and TV shows you have is a period in your life where you faced extraordinary obstacles, and then those obstacles are you champion, you successfully navigate those obstacles, and then you have a moment of triumph, and then they make a movie just about that. And like that's not life, right? That's not what happens. And most of life is just grinding it out, right? Grinding, it's mundane, and there isn't these big moments. And there's a lot of big moments now because we're in a time of the quickening, that's happening. But even with that, there's no happiness in terms of happily ever after. There's none of this stuff, right? But you have a situation now where both sides are completely fucked. And you have two crappy candidates that are like, they didn't even get good actors. Like it's hard to, for a smart person, it's hard to buy into either one of this bullshit because you know what a Trump presidency is like, and you know what a Biden Harris presidency is like. And Kamala doesn't have any new ideas. She has the same people as Joe Biden, right? Trump has the same people as he had before, and there's no solution. There's no solution to any of these problems. There's no solution to the immigration problem. That's something that's the powers that be have ruled that they want these immigrants to come in, and American kids don't want to do the jobs that immigrants are willing to do, and the whole thing, right? The replacement population, like that's just what the controllers want to have happen, and the economy can't be fixed. It's just completely fucked, and we're $250 in debt, and you can't make people better. Like you can't make weak entitled people better by electing a president, right? Like the people suck. So there's no solution to the real problems that America's facing, and it's just time. Like it's the energy, all of it. America's run its course. Like it's had its day in the sun, and its day in the sun was an evil empire, right? It's an evil empire. We're doing bad shit every day to keep our lifestyle going, not only to the environment, to other people, and all of it, and ourselves spiritually. And so neither one of these people is delivering you a happily ever after ending. They'll be the victor, and that person's saddled with collapse of America, further collapse of America. Like how far it goes, it doesn't matter. Things are going to get worse, right? There'll be moments of like remission, like when you have cancer, but America has cancer, the empire, and it's you'll have moments where there'll be bliss or whatever, maybe, like moments where the stock market goes up, the economy gets a little bit better. But we're all going to experience a cut in our lifestyle in a way we've never experienced before, and that's going to start soon after this election's over. And so there's no, the training that you've had has done you a disservice because you believe that this is all going to work out and you can be anything that you want and you can, that's all bullshit, right? Like, again, if that was the case, then nobody would die, right? Like, if the, it was possible for you to forego miseries and darkness and, tough periods and, if things always worked out the way that you wanted them to work out, then there wouldn't be death, right? I mean, that's the number one thing. People would live as long as they wanted to live. And that's almost never the case, right? Even people with miserable lives who have every reason to want to die don't want to die, right? They all think that they're going to win the lotto or something's going to change, because they've been given false hope from these illusionary, stories, because, the stories are controlled because they can control the ending. And they can control the middle, and they can control every part of it because they're writing the script, right? And as much as they try to write the script for all of us to see, they're dealing with reality. They're dealing with the fact that death happens. They're dealing with the fact that there's consequences to your behaviors and actions that you can't forego. You can't, stop those things from happening. There's a divine system, and you ain't scripting shit, and your soul has to sign off on something for it to actually happen. And God has to, there's a divine process, and you're not in control, right? Your ego is never in control. It's just the illusion of control, and you get certain things and you accomplish certain things through hard work, and but that doesn't mean like you can forego the consequences to your actions and our collective actions, and that's all coming to pass right now, right? There's a time where the collective misdeeds of a demonic global empire are being experienced, right? We're getting our comeuppance, right? Our chickens are coming home to roost. So anyways, I just want to start that off with this Jerry message. Remember that this is, there's the shadow banning stuff, right? And, you have to fight for my channel or whatever it is to keep it going. Of course, there's the membership option and the people can donate and things. Um, there's merch, things like that in terms of financially supporting the channel. And then there's the liking the videos and you know bookmarking the channel and commenting, even if it's emoji or something, and just letting YouTube know you're interested, sharing the videos and telling your friends about the channel. I mean, these are the things that need to be done. There's been some progress, like I said, since I've had those conversations with the bots, and YouTube is not shadow banning me as much, and it's still not where it needs to be. Right, I'm still under $100 a day in terms of like that was the bare minimum that I was like, if I get under $100 a day, I have to do something differently, and that's and I was well under that the past 6 months. I mean, it's getting worse and worse. So there's a little bit of a, I don't know what the average is now. So but it needs to, my viewership needs to increase. Like now it's around 5,000, 6,000 views per video or whatever. Probably an average of 6 or 7 for the past brief period of time. But it needs to be like 20,000 views per day, and then whatever else. I mean, and continuously maybe growing a little bit. And so like I'm not good at doing that. Like I can't do that on my own, and whatever. And YouTube isn't helping, so you guys have to participate to keep the channel afloat. Anyways, let's get into the other stuff here. Okay, so I started making a voiceover for the Journey series yesterday, and I kind of looked into the stats. Like, YouTube does do a good job in their analytics program. They've changed it a couple times. They used to have more data on the comments, which was interesting and good, which they don't, right? But I just looked into the membership thing a little bit yesterday. And I was a little bit low energy. I was going to put the voiceover here. I'm just going to leave it in my Journey series. And then I'll also put this voiceover at the end of the other two that, had to do with just how I was feeling yesterday. And, it was, I guess, depressing would be the word that, just in terms of like the feeling I would get from the data that I looked into, right? Like sometimes you look into the numbers at something and you think about things you don't think about because, you're just chugging along doing your job. And it gets kind of like hopeless and depressing. And so I got a great comment yesterday where somebody said, "Thanks for being so consistent with your content and your convictions. It's rare for content creators to stay true to themselves and not pander to their audience. I've been with you for years, but it's refreshing to knowing no matter what I tune in, you'll always be the same Paul." Well, I'm actually changing, but in terms of what they're saying here, the person's saying is, if I mean, some part of me will say things in a way that I could say them better, and it pisses people off. So, for that, I take responsibility. Like I sometimes will be too blunt. Sometimes just the irritation of comments I receive or just the knowledge that I'm seeing and the frustration is there. Just sometimes I'm just not delicate. But, there should still be value in people realizing I won't pander to you, which is, lots of people leave comments saying I'm unsubscribing because I said something that they don't agree with, right? And fuck those people, right? Because like you're worthless. Because how can you go through life expecting people to agree with every part of your belief system? How can you not consider the other point of view? Like I make it a point to understand everybody's point of view. And I think you could see that I understand your point of view and I understand the lefties' point of view. I understand all these things, right? And so it's really of value to have somebody. Well, let's put it this way, right? When you look at the presidency, when you look at these two clowns running for the president, if you think about the amount of time that the president engaged in just bullshit, right? So these clowns have to go around the country saying the same old canned lines, right? Now Trump has it a little bit better, but he has a predisposition just to make shit up and just completely bullshit, right? Because he's a flim-flam, man. It gets him into trouble. And the Democratic side is much more disciplined, where they find out what people are needing to hear in certain areas. Like it's different what they're going to say in Pennsylvania over, some other state, right? But they have these, 10 swing states that are going to decide the election. There are 10 states that, Kennedy identified, that the media identifies as the swing states, the battleground states, and they're going to determine who's president. And these guys have to go out and say the same things to these people over and over again. And they know it's complete bullshit. Like, they don't believe in them. That's just out and out pandering. And then once they get elected president, they have to do all kinds of bullshit things, right? That have no value. And it's just, it's performative and it's pretentious. And whether it be state dinners or whether it be, think about a king and a queen and hosting people and, looking for support. Even kings and queens need like financial support, and they need, the backing of their higher level subjects and things. And they spend a lot of time just politicking and winning people over and making deals and just, and a lot of it's just like selling your soul to the devil shit, right? And, people think this is a good job. Like it's something where, as an ordinary person, you're free from doing all that bullshit, right? There's things that you would have to do to get to high levels of anything. There's rings you have to kiss, and there's, positions you have to take, and there's constraints by the people who are around you, and, they have the royal family has the firm making sure that you don't deviate from any of these royal behaviors. And all these people who rise to these elite positions, they know that they're like completely, owned, even though it seems like they have freedom of wealth and power. They just can't use the power in any way they choose to see fit. They can like one time, but then they'll be, taken out, right? By the other, people, the handlers and all these things, right? The enormous amount of restraint and lack of freedom and not being able to be who you are and say the things you believe and be that kind of person, right? Like, that's just, what these people do. They don't really have moments of great moments. There's nothing really great about the job of presidency. What's your legacy? Like Trump is living for his legacy in some bizarre way because he's destroying his legacy every time he opens his fucking fat old mouth, right? Like his tweeting. That's what I liked about him. Like he would say, stupid shit, and he'd get into these Twitter battles and things and all that stuff. And he'd act unpresidential. And so he thinks he's going to go down as the greatest president in history, but he's going to go down as the worst because the people who write the story are the people that hate him, right? The people who control the narrative after he's gone. And so, no matter what he does, no matter what he accomplishes, and, Joe Biden is listing his accomplishments of all this legislative, getting rules passed, right? It's just rules. Like people hate fucking rules, right? Americans hate fucking rules. And laws are rules, right? And they're, and getting legislation passed and all the bullshit you have to go through to do that. Like it's like, I have no interest in getting rules or laws passed. I have the opposite approach where you become a spiritual person and you don't need rules because you don't do fucking bad shit, right? Like if you become a spiritual person, you don't do anything wrong. Or if you do, you realize your error of your ways and you don't do it again, right? You're looking to improve yourself and you're looking to be a good person, a spiritual person. You're looking to listen to God and do what God wants you to do. And that's the main thing, right? There might be some interference in this audio. I just caught, like I have this, this Bluetooth thing that flashes. And for whatever reason, it doesn't, some viewer explained it to me, but it was way over my head. But there's kind of energy that goes around that once in a while interferes with the signal from the microphone to the little thing, the USB thing that's plugged in. And I think that interference happened once Verizon started offering internet, like 5G internet from their cell towers, so, yay. But anyways, the job sucks, right? And so this fight for who gets this shitty job, this job where you age twice as fast. You're like people become president, they age twice as fast, and they do mostly. It's like almost all bullshit, right? It's like insignificant stuff, and they don't have the power to do the things that you think. And it's just like winning this thing that people think is important, that people think is a good thing. It's like it's not. It's like something where you do that kind of job, you'll seek that kind of accomplishment, so-called accomplishment, when you're not ready to be a spiritual person, right? A person that finds the divinity within them and starts working towards cooperating with their soul's path. And again, there's a system in place that does this. Helps people on a much higher level to do this, but you can do it on your own, right? And it's Jesus' signature accomplishment, any spiritual person's signature accomplishment, any saint, any person. The first step is to realize there's divinity within you and that there is a purpose to your life based in your soul's path, expanding into the full, I don't want to say knowledge, but the full experience of the divinity within you and the divinity all around you. And a growing deeper understanding of the ways of God, and not in a mental way. A growing understanding of the nature of divinity and how it works. And what happens is people realize they don't have to do that shit, right? They can just, their ego realizes they can just indulge and make bad choices. Like the Smith character in Matrix, when he realized he didn't have to die. Like he was killed and he was destroyed and he just chose not to. There was a whole thing in the second Matrix movie explaining this, right? But that's what people realize, that your ego realizes that your soul has a purpose for you here. And you have a job to do, and you have a set of obstacles and a set of difficulties and things that you have to overcome. And people realize they can avoid those things altogether, or they can not make those things as important. You go through them, but not for the reason that your soul wants. And then you just do whatever the fuck you want, indulge and get power and have sensory pleasure and things like this that is hedonistic and not purposeful. And then you just come back and do it again, right? And people don't realize how miserable it makes them and how disconnected and lonely they feel because they no longer are connected to God and the love that's inside them. And that's why you have all these miserable fucks walking around doing the wrong thing because they get to, right? And so what usually happens is you have your first life and you come down and you're kind of a peon. You're fresh out of maybe the animal kingdom. Maybe you were like a dog in a past life, or a cow, or some sort of domesticated animal that was serving human beings. And then your soul, you're around human consciousness, and your soul, like you can see this with your pets. Your pets end up sort of connecting to a higher level of consciousness and are pulled up by being around people, right? But in terms of this is your first life as a human being, you could descend from a higher place and then that's something different. But something, that was on a lower level of consciousness that moves up to being a human being, right? So this is your first life as a human being. And you're going to be animalistic. You're going to be, still have animal tendencies. You're still not going to, you're not going to develop so much of a higher consciousness. And you're going to be like a slave or a peon or, somebody who does, the lower work, right? The more, physical labor, things like this. And, this is like 60% of the population now. It's like first timers or something like that, right? First or second life. And then you're going to see great people. You're going to see people who have money and power. And you're going to aspire to that because you're going to have all these miseries that are being on a lower level of consciousness. And what you're going to see as the next level on a material level is people with money and power. You're gonna think that if you're the person that's the boss, if you're the person that's the star, if you're the person that's the president or the king or whatever, you'd be happy, right? Because then you're like, I'm so miserable right now, and a lot of it comes from my poverty, a lot comes from my lack of power, and you're put upon, and you're devalued, and you see people living on a higher level. So you gain a little knowledge and experience, and you come back with the intention of becoming a higher, person in society, and whatever that means. It might take you a couple lives to get there, right? And then you become rich and powerful at some point, and whatever that means. And you become a celebrity or whatever that in a previous life you want to be. You could become a politician, and it doesn't have to be president. It could be, a mayor, or it could be whatever. You seek these positions, and you live maybe a couple lives with this situation, and then you realize I'm still miserable. Like your soul realizes, oh, this isn't it. This is not why I'm here. And then after maybe some time, hopefully just one of those lives, but multiple lives, you become a spiritual person. You realize this is what's supposed to happen. That you've had this material experience, right? And of course, if you lived 1,000 years, it'd be different, because if you lived 1,000 years, you can, then human beings used to live that long. The human beings that as we are now, these slaves that were made, for short-term lives, 80 years, 100 years isn't enough time, right? You see, there's animals that live, hundreds of years, right? Like there's, turtles, tortoises, and there's things out there that live longer than people, right? That have a longer lifespan. And people should have, if we're the most evolved, we should have the longest lifespan, right? But we don't. And so there was a time where, different yugas and different version of humans that live, thousands of years, and then you would go through these different aspects of a material life, and then you could spend all this time at the end of your life, which would be hundreds of years, focusing on God and, all the things that you've learned over your lifetime. Once you I was talking about this, how I just sort of get it now. Like I'm just sort of understanding everything, the way everything works. And, I got maybe 20 years left, and they're not going to, like 30 years left, whatever, depending how long it's prolonged. But they're not good 30 years physically, and then, it's just deterioration and these other things, right? And so that's, it's too short of a life for that for most people. But the good news is you can come back in and you can, get it right, multiple times in a short period. Like if you have a bad life that's over 1,000 years, well, that's, that sucks. Like if you go to the dark side, right? Because you're really screwing yourself over, you have to pay for all those bad years, and you have to work off all those samskaras, right? All those impressions that you make. But so, this idea that most people would realize after a couple of lifetimes in power, being a powerful person, that really it doesn't mean anything. It doesn't mean that nothing that you do here means anything, right? This great teaching by Master Charji, the Sajmark system, that said, the lowest part of the higher is still higher than the highest part of the lower. So no matter who you become in the material world, if you are just, putting your foot, like dipping your toe in the ocean of spirituality, like if you're just feeling it out and you're just, contemplating this idea that you're here for a divine purpose and connect to the divinity within you, you're much farther advanced than the highest, most powerful people in the world. Like you've reached a different level. You've realized that you have a purpose beyond this video game that you're trapped in, right? That you have a life beyond that. You have a real life beyond that, the life of your soul. And that's what I offer here, just little bits of information about that, finding the divinity within you, because most people, they don't even have a clue about that. They never think about it, and they don't know anything about it. And it's almost like they're pushing that idea away. And it's spirituality 101, but it has extraordinary value because it's the real thing. And this is what I talk about here in different ways. Even when I'm not talking about it, I'm talking about it. It's just, an entry level to this idea. And it's a huge gift for anybody. It was a tremendous gift, an unbelievable gift that I was able to receive when I turned 29. It's kind of a pivotal time in my life, right? Just given all the things that were going on. This is a pivotal time for anybody in terms of their, 28th year in this thing, right? And so, it's something that's offered here that isn't offered on other channels, and, it's a gift for you all who are able to receive it, because even if you don't do anything with it this life, just having this idea and, having it circulating and the energy that's available in the Sajmark system, the awakening, it lights the light of your spiritual journey. The initial sittings that you get light the light. It's like you have a pilot light inside your heart, and it's gone out long ago. Like it reignites something that you have extinguished through your egotistical behaviors, or it hasn't been lit yet because you're just so early on in your evolutionary process, right? But it's there for people, and it's free, and it's something you can't pay for because it's beyond value. There's nothing in the planet that's worth more than that, than you having your spiritual flame turned on, right? The spiritual fire, your spiritual light, it starts to emerge. All the material wealth in the universe, all the platinum, all the gold, all the all of it, all the accolades, all the stuff you can have in the material world, in the material universe, all of it, the whole material universe is not worth your soul. Your soul is a treasure that's beyond. I mean, treasure is even gives it a bad. People are selling their souls all the time, and cheapening. You can't sell your soul. Like your soul is, you're. It's like your soul has created your body and your ego, and your body and your ego last 70 years, and your soul is eternal. But your ego and your choices can dim your soul and can hamper your soul and hijack your soul's purpose and things, right? Which is what basically everybody's doing. Is completely fucked. Like the earth is completely fucked in that way, because people are completely fucked in their decision making process of what they value, and they push away this knowledge of the soul because their ego doesn't want to hear it. The ego doesn't want to relinquish control. And the ego manifestation, where it is gone for many lives, addicted to power, is some kind of demonic presence that is willfully, hijacking its soul's purpose and keeping its soul trapped down here when it should have been liberated from this nightmare planet years and years ago, right? It is a nightmare planet because of the human creation that is an abomination, the collective human creation that's an abomination from the spiritual world, right? So there's a great story that, I would say is Hindu, but it's really spiritual. It's something that exists. This concept of Nara and Narayana. There's these cosmic functionaries, there's these divine beings that are in charge, like a soul that's in charge of something. Like there's a soul that's in charge of the sun. There's a soul that's in charge of nature, right? There's consciousness there that receives order from the divine. These are spiritual positions. Sometimes a person is incarnate a soul like this, like the soul of the sun or the soul of of nature and weather. And there is a soul that's in charge of creation, a soul that's in charge of destruction, and a soul that's in charge of preservation that the Hindus call Vishnu, right? But that's just the word that humans use, but they're these souls. And these souls, like there's a soul that's in charge of death, right? And your soul will do this job, somebody's soul will do this job, and then move on to something else, right? Like you evolve and some other soul will take that position. These are cosmic functionary positions that are beyond physical life. Like maybe you incarnate from that position of that, you have that job on a spiritual level, but it's a spiritual position, right? And the Hindus call these different positions, Brahma, the god of creation, and Shiva, the god of destruction. Like Christians think of Shiva as the devil, but that's not true because destruction is divine, right? Destruction is a part of creation. And then there's preservation. And this soul, Vishnu, has come into earth a number of times, like 10 times or something. But when Vishnu isn't incarnate, Krishna was a incarnation of Vishnu. But when Vishnu isn't incarnated here, which most of the time, the soul would come down, and the soul would bring along an ego, the part that would manifest as an ego, right? And the ego was called Nara, Nara, and the soul was called Nara, Narayana, right? And again, these are Indian words, but this is not an Indian concept. This is something that was they understood. They understood that there was destruction, creation, and preservation, and in every aspect of your life, you're either creating something, you're preserving it, or you're destroying it, right? Or it's being destroyed. Like you build something, you build a house, people live in it, whatever, generations, maybe it lasts 200 years, where people are preserving it, and then it's destroyed. It can't, a castle, the pyramids, they're not going to last forever, right? Things are created, they're preserved, and then they're destroyed. And that's all of your life. Right now, you're in the process of, going through creative things. You're going through preservation things right now, preserving your existence, and then you're going to die. There's a destruction at the end of it, right? Destruction, and that gives birth to something new. Something else is created. Something has to be destroyed for something else to be created, right? That's just how it is. Like that's how life and especially third dimensional material life works. So there's a couple of stories that I know about Nara and Narayana. And the one I want to tell here is that there were a time where they're going around and there is an emperor. And this is a real piece of shit emperor who has a lot of, has conquered all these lands and created all these miseries and wants more. And the emperor is praying to God. And the emperor is like, begging God for more victories and for some big victory and to get more of an empire, right? And Nara and Narayana's listen to this, and Narayana grants the emperor their wish, like gives the emperor what they wanted, right? Like just more victories, more whatever it was. So the other thing is that God has trouble hearing your prayers because God doesn't have a mind. Like to really pray, you have to get like really close to God for God to fully understand your prayers, and your prayer has to be of a divine nature. It has to be something that's not, oh, can you make me live forever? Like it's not wishes. It's not prayer is begging. Doesn't really work effectively. But there are divine beings, higher developed souls that can hear prayers and have the capacity to make those prayers come true, right? And so this emperor was begging for more shit, and Narayana said, "Okay, you could have more." And Nara's like, "Well, that's Nara's looking at this thing, right? Going, I don't understand, right?" And then they go into the forest or out into nature, like a rural area, and there's a saint, like a higher developed soul, and this soul has pretty much nothing but a cow, and he milks the cow every day and drinks the milk, and keeps him kind of alive, and he's the cow's sick, and he's praying to God to heal the cow because he'll like starve and he'll have like nothing if the cow dies, right? And he loves the cow, he's attached to it, and Narayana kills the cow, and Nara goes, "What the fuck?" Right? Like that piece of shit emperor is just causing pain and misery and doing all these bad things, and you give him more of this so he can do more of the same. And then this other guy who's got nothing, but he's completely devoted to God and he's a saintly person, and he has one thing, and you take that away. And Narayana says, well, the emperor is going to be years before he becomes spiritual. Like he's not even close to being a spiritual person. And so the sooner he learns that this is, when he gets everything that he wants and he realizes that he doesn't really want it, and it's hollow victories, it has no value, and then starts wondering, well, why am I here then? Like if becoming the emperor of the world isn't satisfying, And that's not why I'm here. Why am I here? Like that would be the evolution of consciousness, hopefully. But maybe it won't. Maybe that piece of shit won't be able to do that, right? As an ego. But then he says the saint, the only thing separating the saint from God was the cow, his attachment to the cow, the illusion that the cow was keeping him going when it was really God. And now I've liberated him from that attachment, and he has, just 100% dependent on God because he's poor and he has nothing. So everything has to come from God. And so the killing of the cow was a blessing, and the giving the emperor what he wanted was a curse, right? And the saint was blessed and the emperor was cursed. So understanding this, that you have these two pieces of shit people who are looking and seeking power, and Kamala Harris will be so happy if she wins, and Trump will be whatever the fuck he is. But victory or defeat means nothing, right? The defeated person and the people that voted for him will be freaked out and like, oh my God, Trump is president again, or Kamala is president, and the world is wrecked, and all you people that think this matters, and that there's some kind of control here that doesn't exist, right? These people I call the controllers actually control things when they don't, right? They are they have a stranglehold on the earthly plane of existence, but it's they can't prevent themselves from dying. And at the end of the day, they can't prevent anything. Like when things are going to happen, they're going to happen. When the divine will is manifested, and they're found on the wrong side of that, they're going to suffer. There are consequences of they're going against the divine order, which is what happens if you make that choice to do your own thing. There are consequences for it on a soul level and on a spirit and on a material level. And so it doesn't matter. This election means absolutely fucking nothing, right? And this election particularly, because America is dying. America is collapsing. The idea of America, the American dream, the American lifestyle, it's collapsing in every possible way. And its collapse will be evident in the next 4 years. I mean, it's already kind of evident to people, but people will be feeling it in the next 4 years. And whoever's president's going to preside over that nightmare, the beginning of that nightmare, and it's going to mean, just stress and, out of control, feeling out of control and these things for the people running the system and for the, everybody else, right? So it means nothing. And so you have people who are so fixated on this idea that Trump can save the country because they're desperate and they can't reach up to this idea of the higher, the spiritual. And when I tell them the truth here, they get butthurt and they run away, right? And, I was thinking about this maybe 2 weeks ago. It's been on my mind. And I realized financially I could make two separate channels. One channel that was pandering to liberal people and another that was pandering to conservative people. And, as an experiment, I'm not going to do it because it's a waste of my time. But I just have to say the things I say, my insights into Trump being negative on the liberal channel, and then some of my spiritual stuff without really endorsing Kamala or, even whatever, just going along. And then Trump channel pretending to be a Christian or, one of these Trumpers or whatever. And just, pandering to this lower level consciousness, I'd have to dumb down my content because I'd have to tell the people what they want to hear, which I know to be bullshit, right? And then sprinkle in some of my, more insightful things here. And I would have extraordinarily successful channels, these two channels, right? And, even if people discovered the other channel, they would just, they wouldn't care, like, because they don't, right? Like, I'm not going to do it, but it's, but all of this stuff where, like, people will disregard the value of what I have here, which is the idea that God is within you, which is, again, a higher level concept that, even if you were just a person without critical thinking skills or, without the ability for abstract thought, if you could just integrate that idea, my children's book, my friend within, this idea that divinity is within you, the kingdom of heaven's within, which is the highest level teaching in Christianity that they ignore because they want dumbed down people that believe in their bullshit, John 3:16 heaven story that doesn't exist, right? And so again, that's another thing. So, Christians will be upset at me for saying that, but it's the truth, right? You've been lied to. And so, like, this is supposed to be a truther channel. And so, I looked at, first of all, before let's talk about the statistics, that you have almost no truthers that are telling you the truth about Trump's, his ketchup gate. And you just think about that. Like, nobody's telling you the truth about ketchup gate. Like the majority of truthers. And the majority of truthers believe that the deep state tried to kill Trump. When it's so obvious, it's so fucking obvious that Trump is involved. It's so fake. It's so like WWE. And all these truthers, because I went through this period, I understood what, like you get feedback from people. And I saw when people were pissed off at me, right? Like it happened with the flat earthers first. And, I had a number of flat earthers that loved my content. And then I told them that was like bullshit. That's a bullshit thing, the flat earth movement. And they got pissed off and they left, right? And various other groups of people, that over time. And I realized, I was losing money and, I was losing subscribers and, by telling the truth. And I was like, well, I just have to hope there's enough higher developed people out there that appreciate somebody doesn't pander to them. And even if they disagree with the stuff that I say, if they stick around long enough, they'll figure out I was right. Because I serve God, and God is showing me that the truth is at least up to my capacity to see it. And I'm giving them, stuff that's coming straight from the source, with it coming through a filter of my own limitations. But at least it's pure in my, ability to express it. Like I go into almost like a state and just the words just flow through me. Like I'm not even really, I don't give my own opinions often. My jokes and things. Yeah, I sprinkle some things in there, but mostly it's, it's like, it's channeled type of stuff that's coming through, right? And so that people would appreciate that. And it's such a small number of people. Like, everyone is going to experience something where I say something that goes against one of their core kind of beliefs. And they're just, they can't take it. And they're just going to, just over nothing, over Trump, right? But, there's no real truth community. If you've been looking at false flags and all the other things that go on, you've been looking at all that kind of stuff, right? And you see this thing with Trump and you're like, oh, Trump's not involved when he clearly is. And you buy into this bullshit. Like Trump's so remedial, right? And Trump's told you over and over again. Like I show you the stuff with, the various times he's pulled that, that fake doctor thing. Is there some doctor, whatever it is, some fainting shill in the audience. But there was a time where, and I looked for the video, I couldn't find it, but it, it's there. And when they were running the primary, and Ron DeSantis was the front runner, and Trump was hammering him all the time. And they said, "You really dislike the guy?" I said, "No, he's just the front runner. Like he's my biggest challenger. If somebody else passes him by, which ended up being Nikki Haley, then all his attacks went on her, right? And he didn't need to attack either one. But he did it, and he just made shit up and said whatever, because Trump does that. Like he just lies, when it suits his purpose. He just makes things up. He's doing it with Kamala Harris now. He's saying things that are just not true about her, right? Whether he's saying she's a communist or any of these, things, stupid shit that right-wing Republicans are prone to believe in, because he's a panderer and he tells you what he wants to hear, but sometimes he doesn't, and he tells you the truth and you still won't believe it, right? Because you're, the Trumpers. And it's, really sad, right? And because, the higher is available and you just really want the lower. And that's been the problem with humanity, right? And I'm painfully aware of this, that all these spiritual people, saints, all of them, they come down with a purpose. And sometimes people get into these saints, right? The people like with Jesus, right? He gets a following. Jesus is a good example of this. And then, he brings them up and they're able to be with him on, to where he's, they know he's beyond them, but like they get them, and it's within the realm of their understanding, right? And any great leader even has this issue, that somebody who sees it is a visionary and can see things other people can't, and they follow this person until they don't, and then they turn on them, especially in the West, especially in where white people live, right? Like there's this tendency to turn on the spiritual person, which is what happened with Jesus. And he reached a level where the people just couldn't go with him to that level, and it wasn't a very high level. Jesus was on the first or second ring of spirituality, and wrong, like in terms of the ladder. He wasn't even, he was up like a couple of steps above people, and it was too much for people, especially people in that area. And so they tortured and killed him, right? And he was on the cross, and he said, "Father, why hast thou forsaken me?" But that was really about the piece of shit people that couldn't rise up to his teachings, right? And this happens across the board, even in more subtle ways. There was a time where the second master of the Sage system was talking to his successor, and people were just sucking. It was just like people sucking. Actually, he was talking to a person about this, and this his successor was there, and he said, "What I'm doing for them is my business. What they're not doing for me is their business, right?" And he was disappointed. Like he died disappointed, as did the third master of the system, died disappointed in people. But when you work for God, you work for God, and people do what they do because they have the freedom to fuck things up and to choose the wrong thing. And they will. Like, I know this. Like, I'm painfully aware of it. Like, I don't, that's why I'm not, out there with people, and I'm not forming relationships with people, because it's just draining, because their failure will just be depressing, right? Like, I don't look into the people part. Like, I just know, whatever. I just keep on going and trugging along and do what God wants me to do and not worry about the results. I was told that by the third master of the system, that you work for God and not for results. God gives you the work. The work is yours. You do the work, and the results are his. The results are God's. And that made sense to me, and it's worked for me to concentrate on that, right? But every once in a while, I look into the numbers. So I looked into the numbers, and on my videos, like the last video right now has 5,160 views, and it has 260 comments, and it has 566 likes. And so it has 10% likes, right? So out of the 5,000 people who watch the video, even with me saying to them, my channel is being, shadow banned, and I'm struggling to keep this thing going. And these people are, I suppose out of these 5,000 people, the majority are benefiting from them because they come back every day and watch it, right? And even if they're not benefiting and they dislike me, they're still watching the content and want to probably see more of it, right? People who watch the content even out of dislike for me or whatever, you're still watching the content, right? And so, like, even if you're a hater, you're still, in some way benefiting from the content and want to see it. And so with me saying to them, I need your help, only 10% of the people could be bothered to hit the like button, right? And then, me saying, well, commenting helps. Oh, and, there are more comments than normal. Only 5% of the people, 260, are like hitting the comment button. Well, even leaving a comment, even as simple as an emoji, right? And so that's 5% of the people. But then less than 1% of the people, let me see, there's 195 members, which is less than 1% of the 10,000 or so people who regularly watch my videos. And so, people who are willing to pay and financially support the channel who benefit from it, right? And I know there's got to be more people than that. Like, I'd hope there'd at least be 1,000 people. Like, I don't know if I went to just a membership-only content, how many people would actually pay then, because they are forced to pay. It wouldn't be voluntary. But either way, that's dismal, because 5 or 10,000 people is a lot. Like I said, if I walked out on stage and there was 10,000 people, 5,000 people there, which is, people who regularly listen to me every day, that's a lot of people, right? Many of those people really value what I have to say, and they look at this channel as being like a beacon of something, right? Someone called it a hymn of God or so, I don't know. And that's how people feel about it. I'm not saying that because like I'm not a fan. I don't watch my own stuff, but people who do, right? People value what comes through me into this, these videos and things like this. But there's 10,000 people is nothing compared to the 7 billion people that are on planet Earth, right? And there's got to be, I would say 1 million people, at least in America, who could watch my content, and benefit from it. Like that would be, I mean, in terms of all the other people, all these, if you look at what people are, out there who have millions of viewers and, in social media and, people like Joe Rogan, and it's not nearly, my content is more sophisticated, more evolved than their content. Like I've reached levels in my personal spiritual journey, and I understand things on a level that they don't. Not being arrogant about it, just that's facts, right? That's just truth. But it's 10,000 people, and out of those 10,000 people, 5,000 will watch a video. So out of those 5,000, 10% will like the video, 5% will comment, and about 1% are willing to contribute financially. So I'm not complaining about that, but it's like depressing. Like it's, I mean, if I looked into that on a regular basis, and again, I have the blessing of being able to remember I work for God and not for you all. Like I'm doing this because God wants me to do it, but I have no faith in humanity. This is, not just from this, but every spiritual movement that's ever existed. The people don't rise up to it. Every spiritual leader dies bummed out, dies disappointed in humanity, dies with this idea, well, this is a waste of fucking time. And at some point it will be. It'll be like, all right, fuck this, we'll do something else. This isn't working. And we're pretty close to that point. And so, you do whatever you're supposed to do. And that's what whatever God wants me to do, I have hope, whatever, like a faint hope that maybe things will turn around. Of course, we haven't hit that point where, the addiction of our society is no longer there. The bells and whistles where people are living in a depressed time of, really difficult physical, material lives. And there's just one chance of survival, and that's connected to divinity within them. Like they have to connect to God because their very survival is dependent on it. And when that kicks in, we'll see what happens. I don't know if I'll be here for that as this person, but there'll be some, resolution for all of us when we see if the, when it gets to that state where people have no choice but to connect to God, and all the power structure has been taken down and all the distractions have been removed, and people are, still unable to rise up to their higher nature, then that'll be it. They'll try something else, right? God will. There'll be some, maybe the dolphins or whatever. There'll be some other, and so that's where we are as a species. I have a lot of faith or belief in humanity's ability to do the wrong thing. Like, I see that there's the higher, and I see people sometimes flirt with the higher. I see it with my own existence. Like I know I could do better, and so the tendency to go to the lower is always there, right? And they go after you when you have your moments of like going to the lower, like people who you have their moments of weakness. Everyone else sets into you and calls you a piece of shit, but they're all doing it. Like if you're rising up to the higher, then why are you condemning everybody who just can't, right? Do you see what I'm saying? Like why are you, like like it's sad that they can't, right? I have to point it out here because what part of my job is to say, you see all these people that are rich and famous and that are powerful, they're miserable and they're horrible people. So that ain't it, right? And there's got to be something else, and that something else is the divinity within you and rising up and pulling the saint out of you. There's a saint, a spiritual person that exists in all of us, and it's there for people to come and all of those things. All right, so this is going to be long introductions here, but they're important. And, let's get to the other stuff here. Okay, so I started this video yesterday. It was a little bit. Today is uh, today is September 2nd, Monday, September 2nd. Is it Labor Day today? I guess Veterans Day, something. It's a holiday. And so I started this video yesterday, and I remembered that I was going to complete the Kamala interview, which I'll do in the next video, because I didn't know I was going to do a 45-minute voiceover this morning, and this puts this well over 2 hours. But I saw something on TV about Israel, which I'm going to get to in a moment, and so I'm going to put this stuff in the beginning of the video right after my 45-minute, whatever it was, second introduction this morning. And this stuff has to do with Kamala Harris, and there's Israel, and then I also want to bring this around to Trump and support what I was saying in that introduction. So this is Kamala's acceptance speech talking about her mom.
Was 19 when she crossed the world alone, traveling from India to California with an unshakable dream to be the scientist who would cure breast cancer.
Fail.
When she finished school, she was supposed to return home to a traditional arranged marriage. But as fate would have it, she met my father, Donald Harris, a student from Jamaica.
Who I'm not talking to. He isn't here, even though he lives a mile from the White House in Washington, D.C. We haven't seen each other in years, and he basically hates me.
They fell in love and got married, and that act of self-determination made my sister Maya and me.
Okay, so I want to talk about this. Let me switch over to a voiceover. So the thing about it is, her mom and dad's marriage was an epic failure, right? So they were married for about 5 years. And in India, you just don't get divorced. And so her mom went home and got the arranged marriage, because she's saying self-determination, that act of self-determination where she went and got what's called a love marriage in India, as opposed to arranged marriage. And arranged marriages often suck. The arranged marriages in India. Sometimes the kids are really young when they make the arranged marriage. And just like arranged marriages in the royal family and these things where your parents and your relatives are determining the marriage, it often has to do with material benefits, either social climbing, upward movement, socially or economically, right? Somebody who's doing well economically will marry somebody on a higher social standing, will marry a royal person, right? Something like that. And it's, all based in the needs of the family and, whatever other, agencies are involved, and not about the couple. But a true arranged marriage where a higher developed soul, the ones that I saw in the Sizemore system, were about spiritual benefit of the couple, and somebody who was on a higher level, could see, the connections and the reason for the marriage. It's a beautiful thing, because the kids are surrendering to a divine purpose, and their parents and the elders are looking for what's best spiritually for the children. And they pick somebody that the kids themselves might not pick for themselves, right? And so the arranged marriage, when it's done that way, is superior to a bunch of dopes out there online or in, bars or wherever you are trying to meet people and randomly hoping that you pick the right person in a drunken stupor or whatever, right? We know about the high divorce rate in the American, Western marriage, where you have two people who think they love each other and don't have any, long-term understanding of that other person or themselves, and they both go through changes and grow apart, or the lack of family support and all the pressures of a modern day couple leads to 50% divorces. And the other 50%, how many people are in good marriages, right? But if Kamala's mom went back to India, she'd still be married, right? If she went back to India and had an arranged marriage, she'd still be married. And so a 5-year marriage where the dad is so distanced from the two girls that at least Kamala has no relationship with him, and I don't know if the other daughter does. The dad is completely out of their life. The mom's dead now, and it was a failed marriage, right? Like she's talking about this about her mom's act of self-determination, but it was a bad choice. She chose the wrong guy, and she had to be a single mom in a time where it was difficult with multiracial kids and all the things that she was struggling with. I mean, obviously they had some money. They were, the mom had a doctorate, and so they weren't poor. They were, upper middle class, but still, it was whatever. And she produced Kamala, right? Like out of this, this failure of a union was produced Kamala. And so let me get to the other thing here. So the other thing is a follow up to the interview part that I already covered. Somebody left a good observation in a comment.
Staying on President Biden, when he called you and said he was pulling out of the race, what was that like? And did he offer to endorse you right away, or did you ask for it?
It was a Sunday, so here I'll give you a little too much information.
Go for it. There's no such thing, Madam Vice President.
My family was staying with us, and including my baby nieces, and we had just had pancakes and, Auntie, can I have more bacon? Yes, I'll make you more bacon. And then.
Okay, so somebody pointed out that her husband's Jewish, and he's really into being Jewish. Like he's, talks about his Judaism, and she's serving bacon, right? But the other piece to this is she comes from a very strict vegetarian Tamilian Brahmin caste, right? And they are very strict vegetarians. So much so that many of these Brahmins don't even eat fucking onions, right? They don't even eat onions. There's a time where the third master of the system, Charji, came to meet Babaji, his master for in northern India. So Charji was a Brahmin, and Babaji was in the northern caste. Now, the northern people, they were always fighting off the Mongols and these other, invading forces, the Aryans. Like there was all these invaders that would come into India. And so the northern part of India, they had to be warriors, right? You have the Sikhs and you have, Muslims, and you have people that ate meat and they're more physical. A lot of these castes are in business now, and they're in, they're in the military, or they're in, they're some of them are like Bollywood stars. Like they do, they're more materialistic. Oftentimes they're lighter skinned, right? And they have, they eat meat. Like they have more of a physical life. But the Brahmins who live in southern India are often the politicians, the teachers, and the gurus, and they eat very subtle food. Like there's this sattvic food in Ayurveda, and onions are considered very gross, very powerful food, not subtle. And so they don't even eat onions, right? Never mind meat. Like, they're vegetarians, very strict vegetarians. Like the southern Indian food is all vegetarian. You'll find northern Indian food has some meat in it, right? And so none of them eat pig. Like pigs are not a part of the Indian diet. So to complete the story, this guy Charji is a Brahmin and Babaji is the Kshatriya. I don't know if that's pronounced. It's not pronounced correctly. But he's a vegetarian. He's a Hindu, but he eats onions. And he goes up to Charji, goes, "Do you eat onions?" Right? And Charji said no. I think later on he started to eat onions. I'm not sure. Because he was from that Brahmin caste, right? And so is Kamala. Like that's where Kamala comes from, that same area. Her mom was an educated Brahmin. And so if you're not going to eat onions, pig is out of the question, right? Kamala Harris has a Jewish husband, and you know how they feel about bacon. And she has, whatever, I don't know what her current beliefs are. And I don't know what her stepkids, her husband's kids eat. But she's serving bacon on a Sunday, right? Because she's trying to be American. Like the story is like BS. I don't know if she actually does eat bacon or not. But one of my viewers commented, and I told my wife, she's like, yeah, she thought the same thing. It was weird that she said bacon. But that's just for her husband being Jewish. But in terms of being Brahmin, even more so. They don't eat meat, and certainly not pig. where they do eat meat, they'll eat goats and shit. But I've never heard of them eating pig. Like I've never heard of an Indian dish with pig in it, right? And bacon. And so, it just shows you like the hypocrisy, right? So I turned on, I have DirecTV, and I turned on the news. First, I turned on ESPN, and it said that Disney's negotiating a contract with with DirecTV. So there's no ESPN. Like this happens like every year, especially around football season, where they hold Disney or local channels hold these negotiations with DirecTV when DirecTV viewers want to see football, right? And their contract has expired or whatever. So I went to the news, which is good because I saw this guy and he's going to call himself a very proud Zionist, right? And so if you're a Zionist, you believe that God promised you the promised land, right? And so if you're an evangelical Christian who believes in this shit, or you're a Jewish person, a Zionist, you're a Zionist, right? Joe Biden said he's a Zionist. Certainly Donald Trump is even more of a Zionist. RFK Jr. is certainly a Zionist. And Kamala Harris is whatever they tell her to be, right? And so they're all Zionists, right? And that means that this land was all promised to you by the Bible. In terms of the Old Testament, in terms of the Jewish account of things, what they consider God promised them Israel. And this is the Israel of the Bible. This is the Israel were promised. And so they believe that not only the Palestinians are on their land that God promised them, but also the Egyptians and the Syrians and the Lebanese and the Iraqis and the Saudi Arabians are all on their land that God said was theirs. And that's what a Zionist believe, right? And so let's see what else he had to say.
Open with the protests. There have been two seminal events in Israel in the last couple of years. The massive protests against the judicial coup that Netanyahu was launching last year, and then the October 7th attacks as well. And they're now fusing into a mass anger inside of Israel in protest and revulsion at the way they're being led. And I'm a proud Zionist. I got to say this. I've been defending and support Israel throughout. But this is what you do if you support Israel. You support getting the Israeli hostages out.
So he's a massive Zionist, right? And this is where the protests are over some hostages allegedly being killed. And they're protesting in Israel because they don't think they're being... These people who are protesting, there are people who are protesting against the treatment of the Palestinian people. Let's not forget there's good people doing that. But the people who are protesting want Israel to...
Joel, what does Hamas have to gain from a temporary ceasefire, and what is it that best could force them into obtaining a temporary ceasefire?
Well, right now, it's absolutely clear that Hamas has lost militarily inside of Gaza. They have nothing left. They have been decimated. Obviously, the people of Gaza, the Palestinian people, are suffering deeply.
So let's take a note of what he just said. Hamas is decimated. They have nothing left. They never had a military. They're going to get their ass kicked the whole time, right? And we know about the death toll that right now is up to at least 40,000 people. 20,000 of those are kids. Like 18,000 of those are kids. 20,000, half of them. It doesn't matter whether kids or adults. They're civilians. And so the hostages, the people that were killed initially in Israel, it was, in this, like 1,500, another 300 hostages, right? So 2,000 Israeli lives, deaths, and hostages is worth 40,000 deaths of Palestinians, and 20,000 of those are kids. I mean, these are all civilian deaths, right? And civilian deaths are just a no-no. But Israel gets away with it. They can do it. They're the victims. They can do it, right? We'll come back to this.
Hamas needs a timeout for its own ability to somehow lick its wounds. And that is a fear. That is a legitimate fear that the prime minister is communicating. But the IDF says it can manage that and deal with that. And so for a 6-week period to lick its wounds, to help the Palestinian people inside Gaza that Hamas does not care about, to then get more aid That is sort of where Hamas is looking to try to gain something to keep alive its prospects for future leadership in Gaza. It is an illegitimate leader in Gaza, let's be very clear. And there needs to be a path forward to moving them out entirely. But this is a moment where the Israeli hostages and the Americans, the 7 Americans who are still alive, they need to come out and they need to come home. And that means making difficult deals, which is what's on the table.
Okay, so we're going to get into the ridiculousness of this story they're trying to feed you, the complete bullshit about it, right? But first he says Hamas is a bad leader. Hamas isn't a person, it's a group, right? So you know who ran Al-Qaeda was bin Laden, right? You know who ran the PLO, the Palestinian Liberation Organization, that was Yasser Arafat, right? Who's leading Hamas? You guys don't have a leader, you don't have a name, a guy that you can go after, right? You know, that's how it usually goes. Some guy who's a leader. Remember they used to put these terrorists on the deck of cards, and you know the kings would be the most important people, and all these people you were supposed to be looking for as a soldier, as you dominated the Iraqi government, the Iraqi people. And so there's no leader, there's no one person. Of course there's not, because this is not even a real organization. Because why in the world are they still holding on to these hostages, right? Who does this benefit? That's what I always say. You always have to look at one of these events. Who did the Trump assassination benefit? Oh, it benefited Trump. How do we know? Because they're wearing fucking T-shirts of it. And Trump is going back to the place, and his whole convention centered around his Band-Aid, ketchup gate, Band-Aid gate. So who benefits? It's Trump. So Trump did it, right? You say, oh, they missed him, and Trump, come on, that's stupid. Like, it's just fucking stupid, right? Trump is benefiting. Do you see T-shirts? Are the Democrats talking about Trump's assassination? No. Are they? Because it is also their failure, because Biden's in charge of the Secret Service, all these things, right? You got the Secret Service detail from not, for not, protecting Kennedy, RFK Jr. He's been a dick about Secret Service, Biden has. And so, it's just silly, right? And so this guy says Hamas doesn't care about this Palestinian people. Well, yeah, but if they're a political group, because they're saying this is a government, right? Hamas is the official government of the Palestinian people. The Palestinian people are like, give back the fucking hostages. They're beating the shit out of us, right? You think the Palestinian people are going to back Hamas after this? No. You think Israel's going to allow Hamas to remain in Gaza? No. They're a dead organization. So there's only one explanation for what's going on here that makes sense, and that is Israel runs Hamas, and that's why they won't give the hostages back. Israel has done this before. They've killed their own people, false flag type of situation to expand land and to do a power grab there, just as America's done, with this big event 2001. Israel's done this before, and Hamas is doing what Israel wants, right? Israel wants Palestine. They want, the Gaza Strip. They want they're going in on the West Bank as well. Israel has been expanding their land. The UN drew up a map of what Palestine looked like and what Israel looked like, and now it's almost all Israel. And the Gaza Strip is the crown jewel of Palestine. It's beachfront property with access to natural gas and oil off the ocean. And it's, also beachfront property. Israel's wanted the Gaza Strip forever. They've been expanding, doing settlements there. And, the Palestinian people don't have an army. And Hamas is, an Israel shill organization that's helping Israel out. And so either the hostages don't exist or Israel's running Hamas, because Israel's the one who's benefiting because they're Zionists and they believe that God promised them this land, and they're grabbing the land that God promised them, right? And that's the only thing that makes any logical sense. Why the fuck would Hamas not give back the hostages after 40,000 of these people are dead, and they have no chance of any kind of victory because they're outgunned, outmanned. They're considered. I mean, there's no leadership. There's nobody. There's no guy. There's no, They would give back the hostages, right? And Israel would have gotten the hostages by now. They're dominating the shit out of the Palestinian people. They can do whatever they want militarily. And say, we found the hostages. It's a small area of land. They would have found them already, right? Like the whole thing is just a silly lie. And this is what I was talking about with you know with Trump and all these things. You just have to ask yourself who benefits from the event and who's going to politically try to use the event. Who's the victim? Whoever's perceived as the victim is going to win, right? They're going to win the argument. They're going to win the day because the victim is, whoever that is, right? The victim consciousness is what they're playing for here. Israel has the victim consciousness because of the October 6th and because of the hostages, even though they're the perpetrators, they're killing, children. They've killed 20,000 people, children. I mean, think about that, right? And everyone who knows anything about this is saying this is wrong, and they're like, oh, we're the victim, right? They love being the victim. Everybody does. Trump is the victim of assassination attempt. He's milking that for everything. And so whoever ends up being the victim is the person perpetrating the event because they're going to milk the thing. And they're going to use it as a weapon against, whatever it is, Trump in the election and Israel against Gaza. And so victim consciousness is always at the center of this stuff, right? And it's just silly. Like to believe anything else, what's the motivation of the Hamas people, the people running Hamas right now? Why in the world would they keep the hostages when all these things are happening? They're done. Like they're being called the evil people by the powers that be. Like nobody's supporting Hamas. There's people are supporting Palestine, but not Hamas. And the Palestinian people are completely unhappy with them, and they have no chance of being in any kind of power. They're all going to be executed, right? Like if it's just total self-destructive, and a dick move to hold on to these hostages. I mean, it isn't a reality. People don't behave like that. There's no reason for them to hold on to the hostages when it just keeps on benefiting Israel's desire. As long as there's hostages, Israel's going to occupy Gaza. And so if those hostages, if we're talking about the hostages 20 years from now, I mean, we won't because they'll have taken over Gaza by then. There's one thing that Israel has in mind here, and it's to grab as much land as possible. As long as there's hostages, they have an excuse. Once the hostages are given back, Israel has to cave to the powers that be. Even America, as much as we're slave, like bitches that the leadership is completely, bowing before Israel, right? And getting on our knees and servicing Israel, they'll have to say, hey, there's no hostages, you got to stop. Like everyone in the world, the UN, everyone will be like, fuck you guys, there's no hostages, you can't do this anymore, right? And so the hostage is the only thing that's keeping this occupation going. And so any other explanation is illogical, right? The last piece is, remember when the Trumpers really hated Joe Biden and the Democrats were saying how great Joe Biden is? And he's just gone. Like he's no longer newsworthy. He'll have a few more little events. He's going to try to make himself available. He's not even really campaigning for Kamala. They have a joint event in Pennsylvania, but that's about it. She wants to distance herself from him, and no one wants to bring him out and watch him, completely fall apart age-wise and show his dementia. That's just a reminder, everybody, that the Democratic Party has been propping up weekend at fucking Bernie's candidate for, whatever period of time, right? And so, but remember all that vitriol that the Republicans, like, it just goes away, right? Like he's no longer relevant. Nobody cares about him. And the Democrats don't love him, and the Republicans don't hate him, because it's all a joke. The whole thing's a joke. It's fake, right? This election's fake. It's all subject. It's all subject to, whatever's the perceived reality that Joe Biden is the devil and now it's Kamala. All the hatred's at Kamala. All the love is at Kamala. All the whatever it is, and so it's not real. It's not real hate. It's not real love. It's not about the people. It's about the construct that you've been given, the left-right paradigm that you've been given. It's just silly. The whole thing's silly. You're falling for a silly thing that's an illusion that has no bearing in it, right? It'd be fun if you just wanted to have it for fun, sure, but to take it seriously is silly. It's like what I was saying in the introduction. There's something beyond all this that's important, and that's your soul and your purpose here. Okay, so let's get into the stuff for the things that the part of the video I made yesterday. Okay, so it's Sunday, September 1st. I got a bunch of sort of loose ends here to cover. And let's start here with this wonderful meme. Heinz ketchup, they got the small hands. I mean, quality meme. His ear where there's no damage, right? Ketchup Gate originated from this channel. One of my viewers said, ketchup, did I say Ketchup Gate? I don't know. Maybe I think it was a viewer. But either way, this is our thing. Of course, it's not ketchup. There's other versions of fake blood, but it's funny. Ketchup is funny. And Heinz is another thing. It's a whole, Heinz ketchup because of John Kerry and the connection of the Heinz family and Trump or whatever. But this quality meme. And then Tim Walz's older brother is 100% opposed to his ideology, believes VP Hopeful is not the type of character who should make decisions about the U.S.'s future. Jeff Walz, Tim's brother, I'm 100% opposed to all of his ideology, he said, and he has so little faith in his kid brother. Jeff Walz is now considerably publicly endorsing former President Trump's White House run. He told Facebook poster urged him to get on stage with President Trump and endorse him. I've thought long and hard about doing something like that. I'm torn between that and just keeping my family out of it. The guy said he lives in Florida. The stories I could tell, not the type of character you want making decisions about your future. This is the key part here, the stories I could tell. What's important about this is Walz and Terrace are running as the candidates of, we're good neighbors and, all these things, right? They're running as let's help each other out. When they were doing this fake thing with the people passing out, that's their message. We all get along. The Republicans are the ones that are dividing us, right? So what's happened was there was a poll out maybe last September that said the majority of Americans, 70%, didn't want to see a Biden-Trump runoff again. They didn't want to see that. They want either one of the candidates or both candidates to go away. Even the Trump supporters and Biden supporters just didn't want to see him running against the other guy. But they've tapped into that, the Harris campaign, that they're we can all get along. Let's not be so negative. Let's not go so dark. All these things, right? Even though Kamala Harris, I guess, came out and was criticizing Trump about his recent behavior at some frickin' cemetery or something. I didn't see that video yet. But, it's just there's stuff like that. But for the most part, even though they're obsessed with Trump and they're all about Trump hate and Trumpers hate, hating Trumpers. They are trying to be the positive, we all get along, we have good families, and we're not the weird ones. And yet, Kamala Harris's dad wants nothing to do with her. He didn't even show up at the convention, right? Wasn't mentioned. This is a professor, this guy with a doctorate in economics, right? But he's a Marxist. He's an actual communist, so they don't want any part of that shit, right? The Harris campaign. And he doesn't like her. Like he thinks she's a piece of shit, right? Like he doesn't respect her. They don't have any kind of relationship. And this guy's brother. Now we live in a time where people all have issues with their family, right? Where people we're divided often politically in our families, and people don't get along anymore. The family has completely broken down. But these are the we can all get along people. And you can't even get along with your own brother and your own dad, right? Like, how can you say we all can get along when you can't even get along with your, people who are closest to you and your family, right? Like, it's one thing to not get along with your family. It's another to pretend that everyone can get along as part of your political agenda and your political platform.
Some of us who have less hair and are old enough can remember when you could go to Thanksgiving, watch a Steelers game with your relatives, and not complain about politics the whole time.
Yeah, exactly. This guy bringing it. Okay, so this came in after I did the video, the clip you just saw, but I'm going to, I done all these clips that you're about to see, but I'm going to move this one up so it goes with the part where his brother took a shit on him, right? Like,
not be on each other's neck.
Not be on each other's neck.
Because you shared a commitment to democracy, a commitment to personal freedom, a commitment to public education, a commitment to infrastructure.
You mean everyone was Democrats? Is that what you're saying?
We don't call each other names.
When you like weird? You mean like weird? Are you shitting me? Like, your whole thing is calling them weird. That's your whole thing. That's why whatever love you've got from Democrats is calling J.D. Vance and Trump weird.
We don't do it. And we don't use the least fortunate amongst us as punchlines for our jokes because
You mean like Trumpers or Trump or somebody who everyone uses as punchline?
they're our neighbors. They're our neighbors. And
See, this is their bullshit neighbor thing they're running. But you guys are just as negative. Your whole campaign, your whole political party is crapping on Trump and Trumpers and the Republicans. That's what you've been doing for the past 8 years.
so you're getting an opportunity to see the best side of America. And for the young people here, they maybe haven't seen a campaign like this because of COVID, because of things that's happening. This is a chance to bring out that joy, turn the page, and look to the future.
Yeah, what about, look at this weird wife here. Like, she was making weird, like, expressions
Some of
the whole time. The thing about it is, like, your brother hates you, like, your older brother. And, maybe he's the one that's a problem, but we know that's not the case. We know that at least you're part of the problem. And so stop pretending. Like, they're just so freaking fake. It's just, whatever. Okay, so I went for a walk, and this came up here. Tim Walz is actually hurting Kamala Harris in his home state of Minnesota. Now, new 2024 poll suggests. Harris bet on Governor Tim Walz has actually lost her ground in the home state. The takeaway from new polling that likely voters from Minnesota was found that the Democratic presidential nominee advantage over Donald Trump has been cut in half since she picked Walz as a running mate last month. So that's a real bummer, right? Because she had that guy who would have helped her in Pennsylvania, which is kind of a must-win for her. And if she loses Minnesota, and this guy ain't helping in Pennsylvania, well, maybe they will because they don't know him there. I don't know. We'll see how it plays out. Like, I feel like somebody's already been selected, and I don't think that at this stage in the game, they're just rolling the dice with either person. Like, I think it's definitely a thing where they're, they have somebody that they're handpicking.
Here's one of the other things that I'm prepared to do, which is deal with the issue of equal pay. Mm-hmm. We passed the Equal Pay Act in 1963. Fast forward to the year of our Lord 2019.
Wait a minute. The year of your Lord 2019, is Satan have a year? I butchered that joke. I've been waiting to make it. I butchered it.
Fast forward to the year of our Lord 2019.
The joke should have been, does Satan have a calendar, right? Does Satan have does Satan have its own, set of time? Because obviously she's a Satan worshiper.
Women are paid 80 cents on the dollar. Black women 61 cents. Native American women 58 cents. Latinas 53 cents. We're still having this conversation.
Right.
So here's what I'm prepared to do. Instead of putting the burden on that working woman to prove that she's not getting paid as much, I'm going to shift the burden to the corporations to require that they prove they're paying people equally. Mm-hmm. And then they have to post that information on their website. And there's more. And to the point that they are paying women differently than men. For every 1% that they're paying women different than men, an equal 1% of their previous year's profits will be fined. And they will have to pay.
Okay, so it's a horrible idea because corporations are leaving America left and right. This is the kind of shit that bankrupted California, right? Now, I'm not saying that, the Republicans say there's no pay gap. Democrats have been saying there is. I don't know. Like, I have no idea which is true. Like, I don't care. Like, it's not, there's no way to, I know I'm not getting equally paid at YouTube. I'm not getting compensated fairly for my work here. We're being shadow banned, all those things, right? Like, people have these things they have to deal with. But her proposal here to solve this problem, if it does exist, right, if it is a real problem, is, again, you have lots of these corporations who are now run by women. They have CEOs who are women, right? But anyways, if that's the case, that women aren't getting paid as much, and this solution will just be harder for corporations, and it's just probably one of her superficial bullshit things that she does to pretend she's doing something, but it's not really effective, and and no one really complies. But she can say in her, whatever she does, that she's doing something. Like that's her MO. But it's a horrible idea because corporations they're already, they can already exist in, places that, they can still, with the internet and the way everything is, they don't have to have their headquarters in America to avoid taxes. And that's what's happening, right? And most of the corporations are registered in Delaware because of the corporate tax breaks. I mean, things like that are already happening in the United States, and they can just ship your operations overseas, which is happening more and more. That's going to happen no matter what, and this is going to help it happen. Okay, so look at this guy here.
We need to reward the things that we think are good and punish the things that we think are bad. So you talk about tax policy. Let's tax the things that are bad and not tax the things that are good. If you're making $100,000, $400,000 a year, and you've got 3 kids, you should pay a different, lower tax rate than if you're making the same amount of money and you don't have any kids. It's that simple.
I totally agree.
We need to reward the things that we think are good and punish.
So, he's very effeminate. Like, it's just, there's something wrong this is off about this guy. I mean, they're all, they all have something off. They're not natural people. Like, they're all reptilians, like wearing human suits, but he's like very effeminate and very weird. And again, with this stupid tax policy, like, I mean, I had 4 children that are grown. Does that apply to me now? Like, I don't, my kids are no longer dependents, right? I mean, whatever the thing is. But, I think that families need to be supported, but this isn't the way to do it, right? Like, find other ways to support families. I mean, and also, if you don't have kids, I mean, the way the world is right now, and certainly overpopulation is a real issue, and, there's real problems going on. And there are people who are better off not having kids. There are people who shouldn't have kids, right? They're going to be shitty parents. I mean, almost everybody, but, most people are going to be shitty parents because we haven't been trained to be good parents, and people are just, they don't know what to live. They don't know how to live, right? They don't know how to perceive reality, so they don't know how to prepare their kids for that, right? And so you don't want to incentivize bad people having kids, right? Or people doing it for, tax reasons. It's like not good policy, right? Anyways, he's just really weird, this guy. Like, he's just something off. Speaking of something off here, check out Maxine Waters. She's having a glitched out moment here. This is from a while back, but somehow it popped up in my feed.
The food security issue, he's been spelling that out the whole time. I want you to know that we in the Congress fully support and take pride in the president's agenda that he is advancing here in the Summit of the American Injustice.
Okay, so Netflix sucks on copyrights, right? But this is a movie it's called Nobody Wants This. I watched this trailer the other day. And she's talking to this guy here going,
Did you know there's a rabbi here?
No shit.
Yeah.
Where?
He has a beard, and he was definitely judging me.
Okay, so he's the rabbi. Of course he is, right? And, she's not funny. Like, they cast people as comedians, right? And she's not funny. Like, they try to give her funny lines. Like Chris Evans is another example of this. Like, Chris Evans is trying to make comedies now, and he sucks at it. Like, they're just not funny people. Like, they take these people who are, known for being good looking and try to make them funny, and they're not. But this is just one of those contrived movies where she's dating a rabbi and doesn't believe in God, and she has a blog or podcast, and she's one of those sort of, like basically Satanist liberals, and she dates some guy, and and nobody wants it to work. So this here.
Well, you have to admit, you guys are a weird pair.
Women are meant to experience big old orgasms.
They're also making this movie because Israel's taking a beating, right? So they have this guy who's ultra good guy, giving fist bumps, right? He's like the positive person, right? This is, here.
He's responsible, kind, and you...
I'm not a bad person.
She's not a bad person. She's not a bad person. he's a good person, but she's not a bad person. She's just not, religious and spiritual and Jewish and things like that. So this guy's got a wife who's not fun. He's saying, you can't have a wife that's fun because you're a rabbi and you don't have a wife that's fun.
Now you're out here with whore number 1 and whore number 2? I hope I'm whore number 1.
Yes, reach for the stars. But his mom doesn't want this to happen. His Jewish mom doesn't want him marrying some Anglo slut, right?
You gonna turn your whole life upside down for this girl? You're never gonna end up with my son.
Boom. She's not all about that, right? How can this thing work out? How can there be a happily ever after to this thing? And then there's this towards the end of the trailer. Boom, touching her face.
I mean, is there a world where this works?
Boom. Is there a world where this crazy old relationship could work? Two people from different backgrounds and different orientations to this world. Is there a way this can work out? Is it possible that something like this could happen in America? A rabbi and a liberal atheist slut. I mean, could this marriage between America and Israel actually work out in a time where Israel's creating a genocide and liberals want no part of it? Is it possible that this thing could end up having a happily ever after? Nobody wants this. Kaboom. Nobody wants this shit. Nobody wants this, including me. I was thinking about this last year. My wife and I had a conversation about it where I was like wondering, with the vitamin D deprivation that's happened, of course, vitamin D is so important. And, sunglasses being an unnatural thing and how much we wear them. And I'm outside a lot. I have clip-ons for my glasses. And, when she had found some things about sunglasses and somebody sent this to me as well. And the sun is bright and I think it can do damage to your eyes. Of course, I did sun gazing before too in the morning. And again, not recommending anything. This isn't me advising people on their health because I'm very clear about that. These are just, things that I think about. And this guy said this about this whole thing. So, sun gazing is done in the morning and it, sunset and, it's a whole thing. Like you can't do it in the middle. You can't look at the sun right in the middle of the day. I mean, it does real damage to your eyes, but, there's this aspect of having sunglasses on.
First introduced sunglasses started triggering a massive increase of cancers. It has everything to do with cancer. You are filtering out certain rays of the sun, which are supposed to enter. You're blocking them out. And the pineal gland, which receives the light in a different color formation, that means the entire spectrum of light, it is necessary for the body to have that light, the basic metabolic processes. Also, you have to allow UV light to come in. When you do that, you are producing a hormone in the brain that is responsible for the melanin production in your skin. So that's where your skin protection occurs. If you are not producing that, your skin becomes susceptible to even sunlight. Let's say you wear sunshades. The body thinks it's dark outside.
Okay.
And it doesn't make that hormone that is responsible for producing the melanin to protect your skin. The light is needed. Every cell communicates with every other cell through light. Our cells require sunlight to grow, reproduce themselves, so that you have a new body constantly created over and over and over again. When they first...
So, I can't validate what he's saying, and I'm not going to try to, but it sounds about right. It's, how can you do it? Like, so there's, most everything that they tell you. Remember when COVID first happened and they told you to stay inside and stay off the beaches, because you had to social distance and you weren't supposed to go outside. And it was like summertime. And, one of the reasons that the flu doesn't exist, some doctor told me this years ago, the flu exists in the northern hemisphere half the year and the southern hemisphere the other half. And I think it all has to do with the position of the sun in summer and sunlight, right? And I think it's to do with winter, right? The lack of sunlight, vitamin D being such an important part of all this stuff. But also, the sun helps you make mitochondrial melatonin, which is, melatonin is really important, even more so than vitamin D. And as you get older, you lose your melatonin. And when I go out now, I'm out in the sun. Like I have a really good tan now. I've been making an effort to take my shirt off even when it's cold out and absorb sunlight. And when I'm feeling the sun, and I really respond positively. It really makes me feel good. Like I realize that whenever I've been tan, I'm always more healthy. I was born in the summer, and I have I get a really good, I'm able to get very tan, and so I need more sun than somebody who has lighter skin, right? And because I don't know the Italian part of Albanian or whatever it is, right? The part of me that makes me have the ability to have darker skin, like browner skin. But whenever sometimes I go out when it's like early morning and I'll, do almost like a little sun gazing, or, I'm sitting there in the sun, or, when I'm doing work and the sun's out, I have the thought that the sun is creating mitochondrial DNA, mitochondrial melatonin, and also it's going into my glands and things like this, right? Because your glands are really important to your health. It's a whole thing. I've talked about glands before. But I have this mental thought, like it's making these processes happen in my body because they're, not only creating vitamin D, but also this other stuff. This kind of, so, yet I don't advise people on their health, but it's been working for me. So this is an interesting picture. The Grand Canyon looks like the Sphinx and the pyramid. But I don't think that's intentional. I mean, it's worn down the rock, but it would have had to be carved out of rock. They didn't build this. And so, it's possible, but I don't think it's likely, I think it's just a coincidence. But who knows? There's pyramids all over the world, right? So I've covered that before, and it definitely, looks like it. The Grand Canyon, I've seen that before, and so, but again, that isn't something that was built. So there'd have to be some sort of structure carved underneath it or whatever. Anyways, but, looks more like a coinkydink. Former Dancing with the Stars co-host Samantha Harris had a double mastectomy 10 years ago. Now her breast cancer is back. Here's how she's navigating cancer adversity again. We know where that's from, right? And then with other Dancing with the Stars news, I can't believe that show's still on. Anna Delvey's doing Dancing with the Stars. You see she's got a, one of those house arrest ankle bracelets, right? I watched that show. My wife and I watched that show. I think it was on Netflix. And she had she's a con woman. And they did like a little mini series on Netflix. Kind of entertaining and interesting. She used to be featured on New York Post. And I look at New York Post all the time to get my, bullshit celebrity news that I cover here. Right? And I never saw her name. I never saw any articles about her. But she pretended to be like Russian royalty or something like that, or whatever it was. And she conned all these people. And then there's that girl, Elizabeth, whatever her name was, who conned all those people in the medical community, pharmaceutical, that she was going to find a new way to draw your blood and, for blood testing. And that, she owes $1 billion. Both of them were convicted. But they were pushing this idea of women, powerful women who could con people and lie to people just as good as men, right? Which we already knew. I think most of us already knew. Like that women had a, more of an app to be able to manipulate people than men do, right? But now she has her own TV show, and she's going to be on Dancing with the Stars for being basically, a liar and a criminal scumbag. It's men usually wouldn't get that kind of a deal after they get caught doing that stuff, right? I wasn't rooting against her. In the movie, they made her, the protagonist. But her voice is really annoying. It's just, and the one woman who did the accent, it's hard to listen to. Like, it's just a very unpleasant accent and tone of her voice. So speaking of J.D. Vance, I've said the guy looks very effeminate, right? And just something off right in there.
Out front now, Sophia Nelson, Vance's former Yale classmate and a close friend. And this is Sophia's first national television interview and an Out Front exclusive. Sophia, I really appreciate your taking the time here to share these things. And I know that, you took a lot of thought to decide to do this.
So it's a chameleon. J.D. Vance's former classmate describes his shifting positions, right?
You and J.D. Vance, of course, were friends, close friends. So I understand you're a transgender public defender in Detroit. Vance now is one of the Republican Party's staunchest culture warriors. So when you look at what you're seeing now, Sophia, J.D. Vance running as Trump's vice president, do you see any of the same person that you knew in law school?
First of all, thanks for having me tonight, Aaron. No, I don't see any of the man that I got to know and care about. It's really heartbreaking to see him become so callous and divisive.
So I want to go to some of these emails that we're grateful you shared. I think it's important for people to understand, Sophia, who he is and who he was. So one of your emails from him, this never before published, Vance says in November of 2016, and I quote, "I really see the racially offensive views of Trump's supporters, not all of them, of course, but it's certainly disproportionate, as coexisting rather than driving his support." I guess let me just ask the question to you this way, Sophia, then, because this is an email and you had many conversations with him. Did Vance believe that Donald Trump himself was racist?
My understanding is that he certainly did, yes.
Okay, so there's this, right? And then Don Lemon's.
Welcome back to the Don Lemon Show, everyone. This episode is going to be a little different.
So you mean it's not going to suck ass? I mean, it's actually going to have some merit or value.
It's going to be, I think, more serious than things that we usually
nothing you can put out is serious.
Talk about, but it's definitely worth your while.
It's worth our while to last. Usually it isn't. It's a piece of shit. But today, this isn't worth the while. This is actually worth your time. His channel is imploding like we knew it would, right? He's getting no views. He had this pie in the sky deal that he thought he was going to get from Elon Musk. Elon Musk could see how sucky he was. In the interview, he canceled it. And Don Lemon is now floundering on the internet.
To pay close attention. It may even be a little bit somber, but I'm hoping...
somber tie.
Maybe, hopefully that's not so, okay? I'm hoping you're going to learn something about my next guest, and that is Sophia Nelson. Sophia is a Detroit-based public defender who used to be close friends and is a law school classmate of J.D. Vance. Now, last month, Sophia made public scores of emails and text messages, as a matter of fact.
J.D. Vance, trans friend, speaks out. He's abandoned his values.
That she shared with Vance, or Vance shared with her, illustrating just how much the man has changed over the last few years. Sophia, thank you for joining me. How you doing?
Hey, good afternoon, Don. Thank you for having me. I'm doing well.
Yeah, I can't imagine for you that the last few weeks have been easy.
It's been a surreal, strange experience for sure.
His wonderful interviewing skills.
I'm a relatively private person living my normal life here in Detroit, but I think truth is important, so I'm happy to tell the truth.
Well, definitely, if you want the truth to get out, you got to go to Don Lemon's show.
Yeah,
truth is where truth goes to die on Don Lemon's show.
Well, again, thank you for joining us. So let's go back, and then we'll get into what's happening now. How did you first get to know J.D. Vance? Do you remember the first time that you two ever met?
Yeah, we would have met during our first year orientation at Yale Law School. We were assigned to the same small group, which means we took all of our first year courses together. And so I would have met him in the fall of 2010. I don't have a distinct memory of our first encounter or anything. I know that's disappointing for the media. But I remember, genuinely really being drawn to him, liking him. We both come from the industrial Midwest. We both, grew up in working class communities, and that put us apart from the average Yale Law student, and we bonded.
We both transitioned
over our shared backgrounds.
Yeah. So you were classmates first and foremost. Did you ever enjoy each other's company outside of study sessions?
Of course, yeah. No, we socialized together, and then after law school, we visited each other. He's come here to Detroit to visit me, and I've gone to Ohio.
Mm-hmm.
Bring it, Don. I can see those wheels turning here.
So it's got to be a little bit weird for you that
Bring it, Don.
That you were friends, and then I'm going to share some other stuff that he said to you, a personal note that he wrote to you. But it has to be odd, like hearing him say what he says and his particular stance now on the LGBTQ plus community and in particular trans people.
It's hurtful. It's disappointing. And what I've seen is a chameleon, someone who is willing to turn their back on their core values and in order to amass money and power. And someone who I think since he decided to reconstitute himself as part of the new right has surrounded himself in an echo chamber of people, mostly almost exclusively men, almost exclusively white. And he's getting most of his information and ideas from the likes of Curtis Yarvin and Elon Musk and Peter Thiel. And I think eventually, if you live in an echo chamber like that, you're going to start adopting some really extreme ideas.
Work it, Don. You got it. Look, what's your next question? Think it up, Don.
What happened, do you think?
Good question, Don.
I mean, I don't live inside JD's head. I can't definitively say what happened. But what I saw is someone who was always conservative, but thought the culture wars were a waste of time, certainly had a lot of queer friends, had a pretty diverse friend group actually in law school. And I think similarly had a diverse friend group in undergrad. And when he was in the military, we all know how diverse the military is.
Okay, so there's lots to JD Vance that is being it's a illusion-based thing because there's something off about JD Vance, right? So I've talked about him, almost looking like a female to male transitioned person, right? Like it just seems like he has that. If you see somebody who's transitioned from female to male, they take testosterone, they start growing a beard. Now he's a tall guy, he's a big guy. So I don't know. Like, I don't know what it is. And there's the eyeliner, and people say that his eyes are just naturally feminine and to have that sort of darkness around them. I don't know what it is, right? But there's something off about the guy. Something just doesn't add up when you look at him. And this person, his really good friend who's transitioned, says he has a lot of friends in the gay community. And, he's a conservative, like he's really right-wing conservative, slamming the gay community and slamming these liberal people. And he went to Yale and all this kind of stuff, right? Like he's trying to be a conservative guy coming from a poor background, but went to Yale, and he was, like there's something off about JD Vance, and this adds to some of the suspicions that I've had, right? So here's some good stuff from Don Lemons on TikToks. Who's going to find my unreleased book first? Here he goes. Let's put it down. Put your book there. There he goes. Put it there. Just see if somebody picks it up or a dog pees on it first, which is going to happen. Who's going to get it? Did anybody get? Why did not? No one picked it up, Don? What happened there, right? So now Don's doing Man on the Street.
Last time he was in office is what they're looking for again.
What money?
Even if it was illegally or illegally, the PPE loans, stimulus, and stuff like that.
That wasn't him.
Who was that? Obama?
That was a Democratic Congress.
Oh, that was
he doesn't give away money.
I didn't know that. I didn't know what. Well, they probably think that's what the case is. Money he gave away.
So Trump stuff there.
How you feeling about the election?
The election, that's fine because Kamala Harris, I think she can do better than that.
You do?
Yeah.
Does she have support from truckers?
To me, because Trump is for the truckers.
Yeah.
That people talk.
Yeah.
But we need to think about other things as well.
Yeah.
But now people think about it, Trump can do better.
Yeah.
Concerning for the trucking business.
Yeah. Are you excited? Are you excited or are you feeling good about the election?
good.
Yeah.
I'm still voting for Kamala Harris.
He found some kind of a Rasta frickin' truck driver. There he is. On the street, man on the street. He's out there DNC. He's doing it. Look at Don. He's at the DNC, but you know, as like sort of a stalker, not as a reporter. Look at him interviewing people. He was just getting it done there.
Do you think white women will show up for Kamala Harris? Do you think white women will show up? Do you think white women will show up for her? Do you think white women will show up?
I hope so. Absolutely. Absolutely. I think so.
Why?
Because we have a lot on the line that she is going to stand up for in a way that we sorely need, so that people's rights aren't erased for bringing us back to the 1800s.
Why?
I don't think it's really about race or gender. It's on the issues, and we've already seen the other side, so we're ready for more change.
The fact that she's a woman is very important. The fact that she's intelligent is very important. The fact that...
Like, it's just so bad, right?
Listen, we're talking to people about Project 2025. Are you a little nervous about that?
Extremely nervous. They want to take us back 100 years. When Donald Trump says he doesn't know anything about it, that's a lie. He knows everything about it.
People who consider themselves patriots should be the most concerned about Project 2025 because they're going to throw out the Constitution. There's scary stuff in there, un-American things that are in there, and I'm concerned for what that represents for this country.
He's concerned. Like this is, he's reduced to this, right? Like a sideline reporter doesn't have his own, like he's got his, you know, like a no budget crew. He's making no money and nobody wants to watch his shit, right? He's 6,000 views. This is an anomaly, 800,000 views because it's got Elon Musk. 10,000 views, 4,000 views, right? I mean, 4,000 views, 22,000 views. I mean, he's getting nothing in terms of, this type of, where's the one? He put his book on the street, 144,000 views. So no one wants to see that, right? Like there's no, this is not, so when his normal video gets 4,000 to 5,000 views or less, and, he's a national figure on TikTok, he's even getting less on YouTube. He's putting out barely any content. He's putting out a lot of these crappy TikTok videos, but nothing on YouTube. And then all of a sudden it jumps up to, over 140,000 views on where he's leaving a book that he's trying to sell. Of course, those are bot views. Like, like he's that pathetic. Here he is here.
And I strongly feel that the Harris team pushing to unmute Trump's mics is smart. What do you think?
I think we should hear exactly what Donald Trump is saying and how he is treating a woman on stage as she is speaking, because he is perplexed now. I think he's found himself in a situation that he's not used to finding himself in, and that is answering to a very smart woman. And in this particular case, he is answering to a black woman. I think that he's on his heels now. He doesn't know how to respond to her. He was hoping that he would be going up against the President Joe Biden, and now he's going up against this black woman. And
why would he want to go against Joe Biden? Say it. Senile.
Found all this popularity, and she's closing the polls, tightening the polls, and he doesn't know what to do. He's losing his mind, and I think the Harris campaign knows on that stage he is prone to, have a fit and say something that'll get him in trouble.
And I strongly feel.
So, Jesus, Don, he's so horrible. So here's one.
We're here in Jersey, Atlantic City. Who do you support now? I know you feel that way, but that's not actually what the record shows. The economy is actually better under Biden. No, that's what the facts show.
Okay,
The facts, what facts? The economy's better under Biden. What like, nobody believes that, right? Inflation, it's when Trump left, he was forced to, he didn't force, he caved and he was manipulated to close the economy. Like a dope, he did it. And that destroyed his economy. His economy was an artificial economy because a lot of his economy came from deregulating the banks and things. So Trump had a false economy anyway, right? But there's no way to say one is better than the other than how you experience it. And the way people experience the economy right now is they're paying twice as much for the shit that used to cost half of what it costs now, right? Or whatever it is. Like people are at the grocery store and when they're buying things and they're getting sticker shock because of inflation. And that's going to be on Biden because he's a freaking president, right? And, like, you don't have any kind of economic, like, no, it's just like, listen to that again.
Record shows the economy is actually better under Biden. No, I'm serious. That's what the facts show.
Okay, you know what?
No, that's not because I watch CNN. Trump or Harris?
He used to be on CNN. They fired him.
Trump. That's who's going to win.
That's who's going to win.
Who you support?
I support Trump. All the people that came to this country legally, it's not fair that they're letting all 10,000 to 15,000 people or 20,000 people here illegally. Have you seen San Diego? Yeah. They're coming off the boats, off the water right here, off the ocean. Did you know?
They're swimming in through the Pacific Ocean.
Biden was flying them in? Did you know Biden was flying them in? You didn't know that?
What do you Canadians think about what's going on here?
We think you're all nuts. We're just watching from afar and just enjoying the show.
Okay, yeah, you got that, but your leader is like,
I got to get out of Atlantic City. Where are we going to next?
I don't know, Don. This is such a riveting concept here. So I don't know when I'm going to be going back to making another video on my Apocalypse Now channel. Like right now, I could do it like once a week, but whatever. And I think there's less interest in the stuff, the turbo cancer and things right now anyway. But Boy Meets World star Danielle Fishel, which is a weird last name, Fishel, reveals she's been diagnosed with breast cancer. She's 43 years old, and she has a thing called Pod Meets World. The podcast is called Pod Meets World, which is,
I was recently diagnosed with DCIS, which stands for ductal carcinoma in situ, which is a form of breast cancer. It is...
I kind of am familiar with the show. I know that her name was Topanga. I think the kids used to watch it at one of the treatment centers I worked at. Like, I don't really know that much about it. I kind of have a sense of the people who are on the show. And so they all seem young, like that was a young kid's show. For her to be 43, she must have been maybe in her early 20s or 19 or whatever when that show was on, right? But 43 isn't that unusual to get cancer, although this is happening more and more.
Very, very, very early. It's technically stage 0. Mm-hmm. To be specific, just because I like too much information all the time, I was diagnosed with high-grade DCIS with microinvasion.
Yeah, it's turbo cancer. Welcome to the club, official. So some other things here. Former YouTube CEO Susan Wojcicki, dead at 56, months after her son died of an overdose in California dorm. So this YouTube executive, she died of cancer, right? And Bill Belichick's 24-year-old cheerleader, open-minded mom, manages a sex shop. And so these are stuff I'd cover on my other channel. And, he's dating this 24-year-old girl who is, her mom is open-minded sex shop dealer. Okay, only spirituality will save this world. It's Paul Romano, definitely reporting for the Apocalypse and the Ascension. Everyone have a blessed day and be grateful.